So to allow us to measure the distance in of the pinion, we're going to need to take this castle nut out of here and set the differential up without the seal carrier and this ring. This ring is left-hand thread and it's very difficult to get out of here. So I'm going to show you how you go about it. The nut, the castle nut, has a locking ring inside, a spring clip locking ring. And what we're going to do is we're going to mark the hole that it comes out of.
Go.
So we're going to take the ring out now, and this is left-hand thread also, so sometimes these are very, very tight to get out, and be lucked out there. So we're going to take the seal carrier out, and we got the spacer for the bearing there, and now we're ready to put the sides onto the differential housing so that we can measure the depth of the pinion.
Okay.
So I've got another one for you tool freaks that like to collect tools. This is a snap-on stud remover. Very, very good. Excellent. This one's probably taken out 1 million studs, I would guess. Anyway, it just screws in there like that, and it's a collet system. And what it does is it has the thread that your stud is, which is this, in this case, 1/4 28, and you screw it onto the stud, take it down to almost the maximum to get you the most support, and then you're just going to tighten up the collet. Yep. So we're going to tighten the collet. Are you ready? We're going to tighten the collet down like so, and then we're going to use that to pull those out. Just see this one. You can see that took that right out. Beautiful. And then just undo that. On this one, I have to tap it because the pin's missing. But that's the way. We're going to take all the studs out now.
Go.
So we're going to put the adapter plates in to find the center of the differential so that we can measure the distance that the pinion is going in towards the crown wheel. Now we got this. This is an incredibly tight fit. It's almost perfect. You've got to get it in dead straight like so. Then we have to put the outside cover on. We've got to pick our point at which definitely isn't there. Well, hopefully it's here. I picked the 3 holes there, the 3 holes there. So now we have to tighten that up. The book recommends that you do all of them in, all of the bolts. But I think that if we just add several of the bolts around, it's enough. It's going to make the thing go in square, and that's what they're concerned about, that the side covers go on square, and that's what we're going to do. So that we can measure the distance that the pinion is in, isn't it going to be necessary to take this breather out of the diff, like so, and the level plug, like so, and this is so we can get a measurement of the depth of the pinion. Okay, so we're going to put both sides of the differential housing on. We're going to put some bolts through, as I said, probably pick a few of them, and then we're going to proceed to the measurement part of the pinion.
Go.
So it's necessary to remove the inner bearing of the for the pinion. This is so that we can take our measurement for the depth of the pinion. It's held in by a couple of Allen-headed screws. They're actually 2BA or 1132. So you've just removed those. They are pinned over on the end, so it's a little bit of a fight. You're going to need to make sure you can undo them. Move that, and now we will put the side plates back on, and then we can do the setup for the depth of the pinion. So you can see the pinion setting tool and the cross shaft, and what you're trying to do is make the pinion as deep in as you've adjusted there. On the bottom of our pinion it said 2.99. We have to subtract 0.500 because this shaft is 1 inch and we need to take half of that away. So what we do is we now put the pinion in, and we make sure that the clearance between the shaft and the pad is 0. You get a picture of that?
That's good.
Okay, yeah. So what we did is the clearance. The pinion is bolted in with the spacer. This is set to 2.49, which is half the distance off, and that gives us the reading of 2.99, which is the distance that we want the pinion to be in. By selecting the washer there and tightening that up and measuring there, you can see that there is no clearance there. It's right where it needs to be. So you can see on the side of the crown wheel that they've scribed in a 008, which means that you need 8 thou of backlash. So the next thing to do is to put the crown wheel into the carrier and then ascertain that we have 8 thou of backlash on the pinion to the crown wheel, and then we can either increase it or decrease it by moving the crown wheel in and out from the pinion. So we're going to pop these so they don't come undone. Then we're going to go round the back and try and do them through the hole there, which probably isn't going to work. No, it's not going to work. So we'll use a longer punch. One more.
Okay.
Generous here, shouldn't have been quite so generous. Oh well. So we're going to put this on the pinion. Like so. Oops, now we're going to get our nuts and bolts. Oops. Now we're going to get our nuts and bolts so that we can tighten up this pinion cover.
Here, hold that too, Bob, so everybody can see that. Okay.
All right. So we've got the pinion fitted now. We've got the nuts almost all tight. These need to be really in and tight so everything's flat to the surface. Talks about 40 foot-pounds in the book, but there's no way I can get 40 foot-pounds on a quarter bolt. It's just not going to be. So just keep going around them and make sure they're as tight as they can be without stripping them. So they're all nice and tight in there. So the next thing we're going to do is put the flange on, and we have to put the crown wheel in so that we can check the backlash. Now we're going to bend the lock tabs up, tighten everything up. Shouldn't have to go back in here with any luck at all. We're going to take the opportunity. I like to use these pliers because it gets them in one foul swoop and it puts them up nice and tight to the nut. You can use a hammer, but they roll, they don't actually get very tight. But if you use the squeeze of the pliers, pull them up, you get the best lock. So that's that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our spacer in and make sure that the I like to put it in the way it came out, so I'm double checking that it's going in the way it came out.
How did you know that?
Where the Belleville Washes touch and where the edge of the casing touches, that's why I knew it went that way around. Not that I think it makes any difference at all, but that's the way it came out. So the Belleville Washes, you have 3 of them. Put those in. And what that does is it puts pressure for the crown wheel. It creates a spring-like pressure. You can see that we've got the new seal in there. To get the seal in, you've got to take this piece, the piece that puts pressure on the inside of the Belleville washer, and push the seal in. I'm going to put that on there. You can see that's held up a bit, and the plate is held on with half nuts and lock tabs. So we're tightening down the Belleville washers using the seal plate, obviously, and we're going to make these nice and even, go crisscross. Once we get these all tightened up, we can then put the crown wheel into the case, and then we'll proceed to check the backlash.
Those locking tabs you're going to do there?
Yeah, we got lock tabs. We're going to bend over once we're tight. So now we're going to put the bearing in. We're dropping that in. If you put it in first, it'll probably fall out. It might not. But of course, like any of this, you've got to go in dead straight or it just jams on you. You go in straight, there you go. And it's the Belleville washer that puts pressure on the bearing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to drop the crown wheel into the housing. And you're going to have to kind of grab it like so that you don't drop it, but you're able to support it all the way in. So see that, that's how you have to do that. So you can see that's what we're going to be measuring here. We've actually written the 8 thou on there, and obviously there's a lot more than 8 thou, but as the pressure goes on and pushes the Belleville washers in, the crown wheel goes deeper into the pinion, and what we've got to come up with now is that amount of movement to be 8 thou. So the bearing from this side in, we're going to put it in nice and straight. Of course, any time it's straight, it's going to fall right out, so we put it in. Could always put a bit of grease in there, which there is, to get it to stop coming out. You're going to line up your holes. Of course, you've got your 3 locating holes and then the others, so I think we're right there. So we're going to drop that on there. Got that. So now we're going to put the 6 bolts or the 6 nuts on there to hold that tight, and then we have to turn our slotted nut with the spacer in there to put the pressure onto the crown wheel onto the Belleville washers. These 6 nuts on, and just set this up for the start to see what we've got in the way of backlash. So I'm just going to tighten these nuts up. That's going to hold the whole thing together. For our final measurement, we're obviously going to have a whole bunch more bolts in so that we're sure that everything is square and down. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our spacer in. This is the spacer that pushes on the bearing, that gives you your backlash. This again is a left-hand thread, sometimes known as a wrong-hand thread. So you screw it in, you unscrew it in, as they say. All these smart remarks. Anyway, that's that. So we're going to get the tool and tighten this down. Tighten this ring in now. You can see my mark there and my mark there. That's where it was tightened to. But this has to be incredibly tight to be of any use. So if it goes beyond, we will continue to the next hole. You can see that it's just coming up to the original hole, and I'm going to have to assume that it's correct. So as soon as I line that hole up, I'm going to quit, because to try and go further, you'll probably end up coming to half a hole and not get a full hole. So if it takes a lot of hammering to get it to there, that's where it'll end up. Get my spring clip and put it in and show you that, just so that it doesn't get forgotten. If we have to take this out again, we'll have to remove the spring clip, but it's always good not to forget anything, because once the tubes are on, there's a lot of work to bring it back. We're going to put the gauge on now. We're going to put the flange on and the gauge on so that we can see how the backlash is on this differential. The housing, the pinion housing, you can just see there's a felt in there. It would have been nice to demonstrate putting the felt in, but we're not going to take it out to put it back in, and because it'll tear for sure. What we're going to do is put a little bit of lubricant on this surface, just so that we don't tear the felt up. So we've got a bit of lubricant there. I'm going to put this on here. Now we're going to have to tap it in with a brass hammer, just enough to get the nut on. We're not going to do this up terribly tight, as I say, but we need this on to put our gauge on to take our readings. So what we're doing now is we've got our gauge on, and we've got the pad that hits the dial indicator, and you can see from the dial indicator that we've got an excessive amount of movement. I'm going to try and show you exactly what we're reading. So we're at 0 there.
I can't see it. You can just see it. Can you do it with
Okay,
one hand?
so I'm going to put it 0 there. So it's 0, and now you can see that it's moved 15, 16, 17 thousandths. 0, 17 thousandths. So we've got a backlash of 17 thousandths. And if you remember earlier on, we showed you that the marking on the crown wheel, it called for an 1/8 thou clearance. So what we've got to do, we've got to take this out here and put a thicker washer so that we push against the Belleville Washes the crown wheel to lessen this amount. So as we demonstrated earlier, the amount of clearance or end backlash on the between the pinion and the crown wheel was not sufficient. Or actually it was too much. We had too much. So what we did is we increased the size of the spacer by 1/8 thou. After several tries and different thicknesses of these rings, we were able to ascertain that the 1/8 thou increase from the 175 was made us able to get the 1/8 thou we're looking for.
Move your hand there.
I can't do it with my hand.
You can't do it with one hand, okay. Close enough.
So we fitted all of the nuts and bolts through, and you've got the prop shaft flange or the pinion flange on. You put the breather back in, and the differential's ready to go back in the car.
Okay, to finish up part 2 of the differential rebuild, I would note that this ring here where we went through part 1 with the pinion, I had that cad bladed, and we got a couple thousandths thickness because of the extra cad blading on it, so I highly suggest not sending that piece out. I send most of my stuff out that's steel to have cad bladed. That way it's clean, and if I need to paint it, I can, and it's got a good surface so it'll never rust. To finish this up, we have the spring retention deal that we always talked about, lining that up right there, and we made sure it goes in. That goes on the inside here in that hole and will hold it from coming loose. And I am going to take and pop that in, and the next part will be putting the tubes on and installing it and aligning it on the frame. So that's coming in part 3. Let's see, I already put the felt seal in this, and Ralph mentioned that in the video, but this felt seal right here, I put it in, and you have to work it in carefully and make sure it's going in and not stretch it too much. I put it in before we did the video. I also pressed the bearings onto the crown wheel, which we did not install those as part of the video. I got the felt, and again, all the bearings are special order from Albers, and they come, you can't find them online anywhere. When we got to doing the spacer inside here, what we found is on our gauge, we had about 16 thous of movement, and we put a washer in. It ended up 8 thou. It was a 1-to-1, so to get 8 thou off our meter, we had to add 8 thou here, so that should help you in the future. That washer that was in here was 195 thousandths, and we added 8 thousandths to it, so it was 203 thousandths to get the backlash, the 8 thousandth backlash that we were looking for. Part 3 is coming up, but I would suggest that you grab this, which the drive shaft is connected to, and put it in neutral, jack it up, and boy, if you turn that and there is like a clunk clunk, your bearings are about ready to go. After you rebuild it, it is just 8 thou, so it should not have very much movement in it at all. And if your bearings go out in one of these, which is getting to be a problem with these clouds, as I understand, differentials are getting harder and harder to come by and are getting quite expensive with the ones that are being blown out. So be advised, it's probably worth the $1,200 of parts to rebuild your differential, and you'll have to probably find a good qualified shop that has the adjusting tools. I would recommend Zenith for this down in Kansas City. They do have all the proper tools. And that's it.